What is the fundamental nature of reality? It's pretty much the biggest question you can ask, right? Well, today we're going to dive into a theory that offers a truly startling, almost elegant answer. So let's just jump right in with a wild idea. What if everything you see, everything you feel, from the ground beneath your feet to your own consciousness, what if it isn't actually made of little bits of stuff? What if, at the deepest, most fundamental level, it's all just geometry, pure mathematics, pure shape?
For this explainer, we're looking at two different sources that make this exact radical claim. One is a brand new physics paper, and the other is a much broader philosophical framework. But they both point to the same incredible idea that our entire universe, and maybe even life itself, simply emerges from geometry twisting and folding on itself in hidden dimensions.
So, here's the plan. We're going to start with an idea from Einstein and see just how far we can push it. Then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of how twisting dimensions could literally create mass. After that, we'll zoom way out to look at a grand cosmic pattern that might tie everything together. And finally, we'll ask the big one. What does this all mean for consciousness, for reality, and for you?
All right, let's ease into this with something familiar. We all know Einstein totally changed the game by showing us that gravity isn't some invisible force. It's just the shape, the curvature of space-time. It's geometry. Well, the theories we're talking about today take that revolutionary thought and just run with it, applying it to, well, everything.
And this slide really gets to the heart of the difference. You see, in the standard view of physics, space-time is basically a passive stage. It's the backdrop where things happen. Forces, particles, even the famous Higgs field that gives things mass, they all just act on this stage. But this new geometric view, it flips that completely on its head. It says space-time isn't the stage, it's the main character. The very geometry of space itself is what's actively creating forces and creating mass. All of a sudden, you don't even need a separate Higgs field. It's all just the shape of space.
Okay, so how could this possibly work? Let's get into the actual science. A fascinating paper by Richard Pinkock and his team proposes a very specific mechanism for how geometry could generate the very stuff of our universe.
The core of their idea revolves around something called a G2 manifold. Now stick with me here. Imagine you crumple a piece of paper into a tiny ball. From far away, it just looks like a dot. But if you could zoom way, way in, you'd see it's actually a complex 2D surface with all sorts of folds and creases. A G2 manifold is kind of like that, but instead of 2 dimensions, it's a 7-dimensional shape, all folded up so small that we can't see it. And here's the crucial part. This theory says these shapes aren't just sitting there. They can change, they can evolve, and most importantly, they can twist.
So how do you get from a simple twist in a hidden dimension to the mass of a particle? The paper lays it out in 5 steps. First, you've got this 7D shape. Second, you add a twist to its fabric. Physicists call this torsion. Third, this twisted shape just naturally evolves. Fourth, it settles down into these really stable, persistent patterns called solitons. And here it is, step 5, the big payoff. What we call mass is nothing more than the resistance of these stable geometric patterns. It's not something extra added on, it's a property of the shape of space itself.
And if this is right, the implications are absolutely huge. The same geometric twist could also explain why the universe's expansion is accelerating. It even predicts a brand new particle. They're calling it the torstone, which, if we found it, would be incredible evidence for this idea. It all points to this one grand unifying thought. What if it's not just mass, but all the fundamental forces are just different ways of looking at geometry? You know, this really makes you wonder. If the laws of physics can just pop out of pure shape, where does it stop? If geometry can build mass and the entire cosmos, what else can it explain? And this is where we pivot from a specific scientific paper to a much, much bigger idea. So now let's check out our second source. It proposes something called the universal fission model. And this isn't just a theory of physics, it's a potential theory of everything. It claims that this geometric twisting we've been talking about is actually just one part of a universal pattern that repeats itself at every single scale of existence you can imagine.
The core idea here is incredibly bold. Life is fractal. The universe is a hydrogen atom undergoing eternal fission. Whoa. Okay, let's break that down. It's basically saying that the same fundamental process of splitting apart, or fission, is happening constantly, everywhere, from the tiniest atom all the way up to the entire cosmos. It's one pattern to rule them all.
And according to this model, this universal process always follows a 4-phase cycle. You start with expansion, where stuff spreads out, just like our universe is doing. Then you get compression, where things start pulling back in. and that geometric torsion we talked about gets cranked up. That leads to maximum compression, think of a black hole, and finally, you get a fission event, where the whole system just resets in a massive explosion, and a brand new cycle begins. Now, this is where the theory gets really wild. The universal fission model says this cycle isn't just happening at the cosmic level, it's a fractal. That means the exact same pattern repeats itself on smaller and smaller scales, including the scale of life itself.
Just look at how this one pattern could be playing out everywhere. At the quantum level, you have an atom splitting. Zoom up to the cellular level, you have a cell dividing. Zoom up again to an organism, and you have reproduction. Even on the evolutionary scale, you have one species branching off into two new ones. The claim is that all of these things we see as totally different processes are really just the same four-phase cycle playing out on different stages. And what's really neat is the theory suggests this isn't a new idea. It proposes that when ancient astronomers like Ptolemy talked about the heavens being made of nested spheres, one inside the other, maybe they were intuitively picking up on this exact fractal pattern, with each sphere just being a different scale of this universal fission cycle.
So, let's bring this all home and think about the biggest implications. If this single, fractal, geometric pattern really does govern everything from the physics of the universe to the biology of life, what on earth does that say about consciousness, about reality itself, and about our place in all of this?
This slide basically shows the whole proposed domino effect, from pure math all the way to reality. Let's walk through it. It all starts with simple mathematical rules, like the Fibonacci sequence. These rules create the complex, spinning geometry of those G2 manifolds. That geometry then twists, creating torsion. That torsion settles into stable patterns, or solitons. And from those geometric structures, you get mass, particles, and all the forces. And then, at the very end of this long chain, reality itself comes into being when the system is observed.
So, what is consciousness in this picture? Well, it's not some random byproduct of a complex brain. The model claims consciousness is actually fundamental to the entire cycle. It is the universe observing its own fission process. It's a special state that any system, whether it's an atom or human being, can achieve when it hits a perfect mathematical balance. In a way, consciousness is simply the pattern becoming aware of itself. And that leaves us with one last, massive thought to chew on. Both of these theories, in their own unique ways, say that geometry and patterns are what's fundamental. And the second one takes it a step further, suggesting that reality only solidifies out of pure potential when it gets observed. So, if we are the universe observing itself, and if observation is what creates reality, what reality are we choosing to create? Right here, right now.